The kitchen light buzzed like an angry wasp as I stared at Morgan's backup phone, its screen glowing with messages that made my stomach twist into knots. 3 years of marriage, and I thought I knew her. Turns out I knew nothing at all. "Working late again," she'd said, kissing my cheek with lips that tasted like lies and expensive lipstick. "Don't wait up, Alex." But here I was, waiting. Always waiting. Alex Greaves, the patient husband, the reliable IT consultant who fixed everyone's problems except his own. The phone buzzed again, and Trevor Lane's name lit up the screen like a neon sign advertising my humiliation. "Can't wait to feel you again. Your husband's such a loser. How do you stand him?" My hands trembled as I scrolled through weeks of messages, photos I won't describe, plans for weekend getaways while I worked overtime to pay for her shopping sprees, and worse, a group chat with her friend Caitlin titled Upgrade Time. Morgan: "Alex is so pathetic. Makes decent money, but zero ambition." Or, "Trevor's taking me to the Bahamas next month." Caitlin: "Just divorce him already. Take half his stuff and run." Morgan: "Why half? I deserve it all after putting up with his boring routine for 3 years." The front door opened with its familiar creak. Morgan stumbled in, designer heels clicking against our hardwood floors, hair slightly messed despite her claims of working late at the financial firm. "Hey, babe," she called, not looking at me as she dropped her purse on the counter. "How was your day?" I set her phone down carefully, like it was a loaded weapon. "Interesting. Yours?" Same old spreadsheets and client meetings. She finally looked up, and I saw it, that flicker of guilt she'd been hiding behind fake smiles and convenient excuses. "Why are you still awake?" "Your phone was buzzing. Thought it might be important." Her face went pale. "Which phone?" "The one you forgot to hide better." For a moment, we just stared at each other across our granite countertop. The one she'd insisted we buy even though it maxed out our credit card. The woman I'd loved, supported, and trusted was a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Alex, I can explain." "Don't." I held up my hand. "Just don't." "How long?" "It's not what you think." "How long, Morgan?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She straightened her shoulders, and I watched her transform from caught cheater to defiant prosecutor. 6 months, and before you start crying about it, maybe ask yourself why I needed someone else. Enlighten me? You're boring, Alex. Predictable. You come home, eat dinner, watch TV, and go to bed. Trevor takes risks. He's building an empire while you're fixing computers for small businesses. I almost laughed. Trevor Lane, the guy who'd failed at 3 startups and drove a leased Porsche he couldn't afford. Empire builder. "So you want a divorce?" "I want a life, a real one, with someone who has ambition." "Fair enough." I stood up, surprising her with my calm tone. "I'll make this easy for you. Take whatever you want. The house, the cars, the savings. You earned it." She blinked, clearly expecting tears or begging. "You're serious?" "Very serious. I'll have my lawyer draw up papers tomorrow. You can have everything." Okay, good. This is good, Alex. You'll find someone more your speed eventually." I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. "You know what, Morgan? You're absolutely right. I will find someone more my speed, someone who appreciates average." She frowned, sensing something she couldn't identify. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just agreeing with you. Sleep well." As she headed upstairs, I pulled out my real phone and scrolled to Brent's number. My old college roommate owed me a favor from when I'd saved his security business from a cyber attack. Time to collect. "Brent, it's Alex. Remember that creative accounting you mentioned? I need some help with a project." Brent arrived at my office the next morning with coffee and a grin that meant trouble. 6 feet of muscle and mischief, he'd traded his computer science degree for a private security business that specialized in discrete solutions for messy problems. "So Morgan finally showed her true colors," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "About time you wised up. She wants everything in the divorce. I told her she could have it. That's generous, or stupid. Neither strategic." I pulled up my laptop screen, showing him a series of financial documents. "See, she can have everything. Everything that exists in her name when the papers are signed." Brent's grin widened. "You magnificent bastard. What do you need?" "Asset protection. Legal, but creative. And maybe some security upgrades around town." For the next 3 hours, we worked through my plan. Every joint account, every shared investment, every piece of property with both our names, it could all be restructured. legally. The beauty of being an IT consultant was understanding systems, and marriage was just another system to debug. By lunch, I'd transferred our savings to a new account, sold my share of our joint investments, and put the house up for sale. Morgan's name stayed on the mortgage and credit cards. After all, she'd insisted on being primary holder for the better credit terms. "What about the emotional angle?" Brent asked as we finished. "This is a small town. Public opinion matters." "Leave that to me. I'm going to see Eli." The Anchor Bar sat on Main Street like a weathered lighthouse, drawing everyone with problems and nowhere else to go. Eli Morrison, the owner, had been a cop for 20 years before buying the place. He knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. "Alex," Eli called as I walked in. "Usual spot?" I slid onto my regular bar stool, accepting the beer he placed in front of me. "Actually, Eli, I need some information." "About your wife and that flashy Trevor character?" My hand froze halfway to my mouth. "You know?" "Son, everyone knows. They've been parading around town for weeks. Mrs. Dorsey saw them at the marina last Tuesday, and by Wednesday the whole neighborhood was talking." "Mrs. Dorsey?" "The 70-year-old gossip queen who lived next door and treated the town's business like her personal entertainment network." "What exactly is everyone saying?" Eli leaned closer, lowering his voice even though we were alone. "That your wife's trading up, that Trevor's got money and connections, that you're too nice to see what's happening under your nose." "Well, they're half right." "Which half?" "I am too nice, but that's about to change." I spent the next hour learning everything Eli knew about Trevor's business dealings. 3 failed companies, 2 angry investors, and a reputation for big promises and bigger disappointments. The Porsche was leased, the penthouse was rented, and his latest venture was hemorrhaging money faster than a broken pipe. "You planning something, Alex?" "Just evening the odds." That evening, I sat in my car outside the coffee shop where Morgan met Caitlin every Thursday. Through the window, I watched them huddle over lattes and phones, probably planning my wife's glorious new life. I'd brought a small digital recorder, completely legal in our state as long as one party consented to the recording. I walked inside and chose a table directly behind them, close enough to hear every word. Neither noticed me. They were too busy celebrating. "Trevor's taking me to Miami next weekend," Morgan was saying. "First-class tickets." "What about Alex?" "What about him? He practically gave me permission to take everything. Honestly, Caitlin, I think he's relieved. Now he can go back to his sad little life without disappointing me." "You're sure he won't fight the divorce?" "Please. He doesn't have the spine. Besides, I've been documenting his neglect for months. Emotional abandonment, failure to provide adequate lifestyle support. My lawyer says I can claim he drove me to seek companionship elsewhere." I almost choked on my coffee. Failure to provide adequate lifestyle support? I'd worked 60-hour weeks to pay for her shopping addiction. "What about Trevor's business situation?" Caitlin asked. "I heard some rumors. Rumors from jealous people. He's launching a new app that's going to revolutionize social media. We'll be millionaires within a year." I'd heard about Trevor's app, a social media platform for elite networkers that had already been done better by 6 other companies. But Morgan had never been good with technology. After they left, I sat in my car reviewing the recording. Perfect audio, clear voices, and enough material to shift the narrative from poor Morgan, trapped with boring Alex, to gold-digging Morgan, planning to rob her devoted husband. My phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem. Take your time." Then I drove to Mrs. Dorsey's house. Mrs. Dorsey answered her door in a floral housecoat and slippers, her gray hair perfectly curled despite the late hour. Behind her, I could see the glow of her television and hear the faint sound of a crime drama. "Alex, dear, what brings you by so late?" "I'm sorry to bother you, Mrs. Dorsey, but I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For being honest with me about Morgan and Trevor. Eli mentioned you'd seen them together, and I wanted you to know I appreciate people looking out for me." Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Mrs. Dorsey lived for drama, and I just handed her the starring role in the neighborhood's biggest scandal. "Oh, honey, I hated being the bearer of bad news, but someone had to tell you. The way they carry on in public, it's shameful." "I just wish I'd known sooner, but I suppose everyone was trying to protect my feelings." "Well, yes, but also, we weren't sure you'd believe us. You always seemed so devoted to her." I sighed heavily, playing the part of the heartbroken husband. "I was. But I can't ignore the evidence anymore. I found messages on her phone, and now we're getting divorced." Mrs. Dorsey's hand flew to her chest. "Oh my goodness! Are you all right? Do you need anything?" "I'm managing. The hardest part is realizing how many people must have known while I was working extra hours to pay for her expensive tastes. That girl never appreciated what she had, always complaining about money, about being bored, about wanting more excitement. Some of us remember when you bought her that beautiful engagement ring, worked double shifts for months to afford it. I'd forgotten I'd told her that story 3 years ago, but Mrs. Dorsey forgot nothing when it came to other people's business. I just hope people understand that I tried to make her happy. I never wanted to hold her back. Oh, sweetheart, everyone knows what kind of man you are. Hard-working, loyal, generous to a fault. If Morgan can't see that, it's her loss. I pulled out my phone as if checking messages. I should let you get back to your show. Thanks again for being honest with me. Anytime, dear. And Alex, you're better off without her. As I walked back to my house, I could see Mrs. Dorsey's silhouette in her kitchen window, probably already dialing her first phone call. By morning, half the neighborhood would know about the divorce, and the story would paint me as the devoted husband betrayed by his ungrateful wife. Inside my empty house, I poured a glass of wine and reviewed my progress. Assets secured, public opinion shifting, and Morgan still had no idea what was coming. She thought she was trading up from boring, predictable Alex to exciting, successful Trevor. She had no idea she was trading down to nothing. My phone rang, Morgan calling from wherever she was pretending to work late. Alex, we need to talk when I get home. About the divorce? I already called a lawyer. He'll have papers ready by Friday. Silence. Then, that was fast. You said you wanted a life with someone who has ambition. I'm being ambitious about giving you what you want? Okay, good. We can keep this civilized. Absolutely. No fighting, no drama. You take your stuff, I'll take mine, and we both move on. What about the house? Already listed it. We should get asking price in this market. Another pause. You listed our house without discussing it with me. You said you wanted out. I'm helping you get out faster. But I might have wanted to keep the house. With what money? Your salary won't cover the mortgage alone, and Trevor's living in a rental. How do you know where Trevor lives? Oops. Lucky guess. Most of those downtown penthouses are rentals. Right. Well, we'll figure it out. I'll be home late. I'll leave the papers on the kitchen counter. Look them over when you have time. After she hung up, I smiled at my reflection in the dark window. Morgan thought she was getting everything she wanted, but she hadn't read the fine print yet. The house sale would pay off the mortgage with enough left over for a small profit, which would go to whoever wasn't liable for the credit card debt and car loans that were about to come due. Tomorrow would bring the next phase of my plan. Time to let Trevor know he'd won a prize that came with some very expensive strings attached. Friday morning brought gray skies and the kind of cold rain that made everyone miserable. Perfect weather for serving divorce papers. I'd spent the week watching Morgan pretend everything was normal while secretly planning her escape with Trevor. She had no idea I'd been planning too. The papers were beautiful in their simplicity. Morgan could have the house and its mortgage payments, the cars and their loan payments, the credit cards and their balances. All I wanted was my personal belongings and my business equipment, generous to a fault, just like Mrs. Dorsey had said. Morgan found the documents when she came down for coffee, her hair still messy from whatever bed she'd actually slept in. These terms are very fair, she said, flipping through pages. I told you I'd make it easy. The house payment is pretty high for one person. You'll figure it out. Trevor seems successful. She looked up sharply. What do you know about Trevor? Nothing. Just what you've told me about his empire building. Right. She signed the papers with quick, confident strokes. I can move out this weekend. Take your time. I'm staying at Brent's for a while. That afternoon, I drove to Trevor's office, a shared workspace downtown where he rented a desk by the month and pretended to run his revolutionary social media company. I found him in the lobby, talking loudly into his phone about disrupting the paradigm and scaling exponentially. Trevor Lane, I approached with my hand extended. Alex Greaves. I think we have a mutual friend. He ended his call and shook my hand with the firm grip of a man trying too hard to impress. Alex, Morgan's mentioned you. Sorry about the circumstances, man. No need to apologize. Morgan deserves someone who can give her the life she wants. That's very mature of you. I try to be realistic. Speaking of which, I wanted to give you a heads up about a few financial things, since you'll probably be helping Morgan with expenses now. His smile flickered. What kind of expenses? Well, the house payment is $2,800 a month. Car payments are about $600 combined. Credit cards are running around $1,500 minimum payments, plus utilities, insurance, her shopping budget, probably close to $5,000 monthly total. Trevor's face had gone pale. That's more than I expected. Morgan's used to a certain lifestyle. I'm sure you understand, being a successful entrepreneur and all. Of course, it's just cash flow is a little tight during our expansion phase. I get it. Growing companies need to reinvest profits, but I'm sure Morgan will be patient while your app takes off. You know about the app? Morgan's very excited about it. Revolutionary social media for elite networkers, right? Brilliant concept. Trevor straightened up, buying into his own pitch. It really is. We're going to change how successful people connect and share opportunities. Have you secured funding yet? We're in talks with several venture capital firms, big names, serious money. I nodded like I believed him. Well, I should let you get back to disrupting paradigms. Good luck with everything. As I walked away, I could hear Trevor frantically dialing his phone, probably calling Morgan to discuss their new financial reality. $5,000 a month in expenses was more than Trevor made from his consulting gigs, and we both knew it. That evening, Brent and I sat in his kitchen, monitoring the security cameras he'd installed around my house. Morgan had come home early, and we watched her pace through rooms, talking animatedly on her phone. She looks stressed, Brent observed. Trevor probably told her about their budget constraints. Think she'll back out? No, she's too proud. She'll figure out some way to make it work, even if it means maxing out more credit cards. My phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. Can we talk? Some confusion about finances. I texted back, everything's in the divorce papers. Pretty straightforward. The monthly expenses are higher than I calculated. You wanted the lifestyle. This is what it costs. Can we adjust the terms? Papers are already filed. Sorry. I turned off my phone and poured another beer. Morgan was learning the difference between wanting something and affording it. Trevor was learning that stealing another man's wife came with overhead costs he hadn't budgeted for. And I was learning that revenge tasted better when served with perfect legal documentation. The next week brought a series of small disasters that snowballed into Morgan's personal avalanche. It started when Mrs. Dorsey mentioned to her book club that poor Alex was staying at a friend's house while his cheating wife moved in with her unemployed boyfriend. By Tuesday, the story had reached Morgan's coworkers. By Wednesday, it had evolved into a cautionary tale about ungrateful wives who abandoned devoted husbands for flashy losers. I monitored the situation from Brent's guest room, watching social media posts and listening to Eli's daily reports from the anchor bar. The town had chosen sides, and Morgan was losing badly. She came into the office looking like she hadn't slept, Brent reported after his security company's weekly meeting with Morgan's firm. Her boss asked if everything was okay at home. What did she say? That she was going through a difficult transition, but it wouldn't affect her work performance. And? He reminded her that their client relationships depend on stability and trust. Apparently, some people have been asking questions about her personal situation. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the text messages about bleeding me dry and taking everything I'd worked for. Thursday brought the first major crack in Morgan's new life. Trevor called me directly, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Alex, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding about the financial arrangements. What kind of misunderstanding? Morgan seems to think I can cover her monthly expenses while my business gets established, but cash flow is complicated in the startup world. I imagine it is. The thing is, she's already committed to keeping the house and cars. If I can't help with payments right away, she might lose everything. That would be unfortunate. Look, I know this is awkward, but is there any way you could help with the transition, just for a few months until my funding comes through? I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Trevor, you took my wife. You convinced her she deserved better than what I could provide. Now you want me to subsidize the better life you promised her? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You sold her on a fantasy you can't afford to deliver. That's not my problem anymore. But she'll lose the house. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she decided I was too boring and predictable. I hung up and immediately called Mrs. Dorsey. Mrs. Dorsey, it's Alex. I wanted to thank you again for all your support during this difficult time. Of course, dear. How are you holding up? Better each day, though I have to admit I'm a little worried about Morgan. Worried? Why? Trevor called me today asking for money. Apparently he can't afford to help with her expenses, and she might lose the house. The sharp intake of breath told me Mrs. Dorsey was already calculating how fast she could spread this news. That poor foolish girl, trading a good man for empty promises. I feel bad for her, but what can I do? She made her choice. You're a saint, Alex Greaves. Most men would be celebrating her comeuppance. I'm not most men, I suppose. Within hours, the story was circulating through every social network in town. Morgan had left her devoted husband for a man who couldn't even pay her bills. The narrative was shifting from Morgan trades up to Morgan makes terrible mistake. Friday evening, Morgan showed up at Brent's house unannounced. I watched through the security monitor as she stood on the porch in the rain, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. Alex, please, we need to talk. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. What's on your mind? This is all happening too fast. The divorce, the financial changes, everything. You said you wanted out. I'm helping you get out. But I didn't understand the full implications. The house payment alone is more than half my salary. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful. Trevor's business is taking longer to launch than expected. His funding got delayed. Startup life is unpredictable. Alex, please, can we slow this down? Maybe work out a different arrangement. I looked at her standing there in the rain, mascara running down her cheeks, designer clothes soaked through. 6 months ago, I would have pulled her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and done whatever it took to fix her problems. Morgan, you told me I was boring and predictable, that you needed someone with ambition and excitement, that I failed to provide adequate lifestyle support. Remember? I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. Which things didn't you mean? That I'm boring, that Trevor's more exciting, that you deserve everything I've worked for? She looked down at her expensive shoes, now ruined by puddle water. I made mistakes. Yes, you did, but they are your mistakes to live with. So that's it? 3 years of marriage mean nothing to you? They meant everything to me. That's why this hurts so much. I closed the door and walked back to the kitchen, where Brent was pretending not to listen. That was cold, man. That was justice. But as I watched her walk back to her car through the security monitor, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not guilt, exactly. More like the satisfaction of a job well done. The boring, predictable husband was turning out to be full of surprises. 2 weeks later, the Anchor Bar was packed for what had become the unofficial finale of our town's favorite soap opera. Word had spread that Morgan and Trevor would be making some kind of announcement, and everyone wanted front row seats for whatever came next. I arrived early and took my usual spot at the bar, nursing a beer and watching the crowd gather. Mrs. Dorsey held court at a corner table, updating newcomers on the latest developments. Eli polished glasses and pretended not to eavesdrop on every conversation. Big night, Brent said, sliding onto the stool next to me. Should be interesting. You ready for whatever they're planning? I patted my jacket pocket, where I'd stored a small digital recorder and a manila envelope. More than ready. At 8 o'clock, Morgan and Trevor walked in together, trying to project confidence but looking like defendants entering a courtroom. The crowd quieted as they made their way to the center of the room. We wanted to address some of the rumors that have been circulating, Morgan began, her voice shaky but determined. About our relationship and our future plans. First, Trevor added, we want everyone to know that our relationship began after Morgan's marriage was already over emotionally. We didn't break up a happy home. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Dorsey made a dismissive sound that carried across the room. Second, we're announcing our engagement. Morgan has agreed to marry me, and we're planning a summer wedding. More murmurs, less enthusiastic. Someone in the back called out, Can you afford a wedding? Trevor's jaw tightened. My business is doing very well, thank you. We're about to close a major funding round that will make us all very comfortable. What business is that? Eli asked from behind the bar. I'm developing a revolutionary social media platform for elite professionals. It's going to change how successful people network and share opportunities. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room turn toward me. That's interesting, Trevor. When did you start this business? We've been in development for over a year. And you have investors lined up? Several major firms are very interested. I pulled out my phone and opened a web browser. What's the company called? I'd love to check out your website. Trevor's face flushed. We're in stealth mode right now. Can't reveal too much before launch. Of course. But you must have some kind of online presence. Social media accounts, business registration, something? The room was silent now. Everyone could feel the trap closing. Alex, what are you doing? Morgan demanded. Just trying to understand Trevor's business model. See, I did a little research this week. Turns out Trevor's last 3 companies were dissolved for failure to pay taxes. His current business license expired 6 months ago. And that revolutionary app? It's a WordPress template he bought for $99. That's not true, Trevor shouted. I pulled the manila envelope from my jacket. Public records, Trevor. All available online if you know where to look. I turned to address the crowd. Trevor Lane has no funding, no investors, and no business. He's been living off credit cards and borrowed money for the past year. You're lying. Morgan stepped forward, her face twisted with anger and desperation. Am I? I pulled out the digital recorder and set it on the bar. Maybe we should hear what you really think about all this. I pressed play, and Morgan's voice filled the room. Alex is so pathetic. Makes decent money, but zero ambition. Trevor's taking me to the Bahamas next month. Then Caitlin's voice. Just divorce him already. Take half his stuff and run. Why half? I deserve it all after putting up with his boring routine for 3 years. The crowd erupted in angry voices. Someone booed. Mrs. Dorsey stood up and pointed at Morgan like an avenging angel. You ungrateful little witch. That man worked himself to the bone for you. Wait, Morgan held up her hands. You don't understand the context. But I wasn't finished. I pressed play again, and this time Trevor's voice joined the conversation. Your husband's such a loser. How do you stand him? He doesn't have to stand me anymore, I said, pocketing the recorder. Trevor, you wanted my wife? Congratulations. She comes with $2,800 in monthly house payments, $600 in car payments, and about $1,500 in credit card minimums, plus her shopping habits, which run about $1,000 a month. Think your WordPress template can cover that? Trevor was backing toward the door, but the crowd had shifted to block his exit. And Morgan, I continued, you wanted someone with ambition? Someone who could provide a better lifestyle. You picked a man who can't even pay his own rent. This is cruel, Alex, she said, tears streaming down her face. We were married. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant everything to me. That's why I'm so good at this. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Trevor, these are for the house. Your house now, since Morgan signed it over in the divorce. The mortgage payment is due on the 15th, the water heater needs replacing, and the roof has a small leak over the master bedroom. Enjoy. I tossed the keys at his feet and turned back to Morgan. You said I was boring and predictable. You were right. I predictably worked 60 hours a week to pay for your lifestyle. I boringly saved money for our future while you planned to take it all and run. I averagely loved you enough to give you exactly what you asked for. The room was completely silent now, except for Morgan's quiet sobbing. You wanted excitement? How's this for exciting? You're about to lose everything because you traded a man who loved you for a man who can't even love himself enough to build a real life. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the bar. Thanks for the show, everyone. But I have to go. I have a life to build. As I walked toward the door, the crowd parted like water. Behind me, I could hear Morgan calling my name, but I didn't turn around. Outside, the rain had stopped, and stars were beginning to appear between the clouds. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Oscar, Trevor's friend. I have recordings of everything they said about you. Interested? I deleted the message without responding. I had everything I needed. The boring, predictable, average husband had just taught his wife and her lover a lesson they'd never forget. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting even.